overall subject here is what is a portfolio career? Judging by your questions, a lot of what you want to know is how do you make it happen? It's almost like you kind of got the basics and you want to go further. That's cool. So let's kick it off. And first of all, just an introduction to me, like how did I get here? You can think of my background in decades because I've got a few. Decade one, I was in the army. So I went straight from school to Sandhurst for officer training, knowing I'd pick up an engineering degree along the way. So I'm a civil engineer, spent 10 years in the Royal Engineers, basically traveling around the world, building things and blowing things up. The next decade was big corporates. I went from the army to McKinsey as a strategy consultant, from officially in London, in reality all over the world. And then from there to Coca-Cola, did various sales and marketing jobs in Greece, Poland, and India. Ended up running Coca-Cola India in a big turnaround. So that was decade two. Decade three was kind of big tech, ad tech, etc. So I joined Google back in London, spent a few years there, ending up as a COO of Europe. And then I did various tech CEO jobs around the world, mostly in the US, a little bit Europe and Asia. So that was decade three. And then decade four, which isn't over, it's all a focus on my own portfolio career and helping other people have portfolio careers. And obviously, I'll talk a lot more about that today. Just a quick, sort of brief touch on my own portfolio career, because everyone's is different. Mine involves two buckets. The first bucket is working with CEOs and founders in a mix of board and mentoring roles. So I sit in about 8 boards and I mentor about 4 or 5 other CEOs, which I love. This is the challenge of trying to change the world with limited resources. I just love it. Kind of gets me excited. The other bucket of my portfolio career is working with investors. Typically it's like New York-based investors in public equities, typically investors in Google, Meta, Amazon, etc. Now, when I left Google, I basically built a spreadsheet that forecasts their earnings, and I've been updating it every month ever since, and investors want to pay me to explain what I think is going to happen next. So those are the two main parts of my portfolio career, a bunch of other little things too. So one of the questions you can tick off the list, I hope, is what is a portfolio professional? What is a portfolio career? Simplistically, portfolio professionals are the top end of the gig economy. So it's forecast that half the world will not have full-time jobs by 2030. They'll all have, portfolio careers of sorts. Typically, journalists and politicians call it the gig economy. Portfolio professionals, though, it is typically the higher end because it's typically specialist skills, higher earnings, etc. So it's sort of a subset of the gig economy. Yeah. The normal definition we say is it's a professional who has multiple sources of income. Now, some people would make it slightly broader and say a professional has multiple sources of value exchange. Because if, for example, you're mentoring on an accelerator, or you're teaching at university and you're not being paid, you're still learning skills, building your network, and a lot of people think you're cool and owe you a favor. And that can turn into money at a later date. So that's the broader definition if you want it. Obviously, a lot of people start doing pro bono stuff early on. But the key is, can you turn it into money at some stage down the road? And you don't have to be all cynical. Typically, if you start adding value enough times, people start paying you. It's kind of nice. Some stats that kind of say, I think one of the questions, I think it was actually in my group, I'm not sure you brought it up here, but why now? Why does it seem to be accelerating? There's a few things. My favorite stat, my favorite survey from the last few years wasn't us, it was by Forbes. It's the top left here. Forbes did a survey of professionals and asked them about their career and life aspirations. Now, overall, 50% of people in their survey said that they don't want to be part of a company. They'd rather have an independent portfolio career. What was really interesting is at the top end of those who they call highly successful, so those people with fast track careers, etc., 71% said their future will not be tied to being part of a large organization. Kind of massive. It also makes you worry a lot about the caliber of future leaders in large organizations if all the best people want to leave. Other fun stats for you. Since lockdown, 20% of Brits have started a side hustle. By the way, about 20, I think it was about 23 or 4% had one before, but it's now 40-something%. So it's
43.
Yeah, there you go. So doubled in 5 years or 4 years. The global gig economy accounts for 12% of the labor market. Now, what's interesting, it's not 12% of people, it's a lot more than 12% of people. But if you have, let's say, a day job and a side hustle, it's only the side hustle that counts in that 12%. So it's way more than 12% of people, but it's 12% of all earnings are already part of the gig economy. Now, that's 5.4 trillion, so it's a big market. And another stat, US and UK seem to be roughly in sync, 44% of Americans already side hustle. There's another stat that shows the direction it's going is 50, and this is a year old now, so it might have gone up. 51% of Americans have formed a company in their own name in order to have a one-person business. So you can see the direction of travel. So why is it happening now? This is not just driven by companies or individuals, it's actually driven by both. So if we start with individuals, and hopefully this will resonate with a lot of you, but first of all, people want more flexibility and variety. Being stuck in one thing that maybe is a bit boring now and again isn't cool. More autonomy over things like where you work from, how you work, the hours you work, whatever it might be, what you can say yes or no to. Increase income diversification. I think with the pace of change, everyone's realized that the day job isn't the safety blanket it once was, because any company can go bust or lay people off. If the big tech companies that are growing like crazy are laying people off, no one's safe as well. And then finally, an opportunity to earn more. In most day jobs, an awful what you do is incredibly mundane and low value. In a portfolio career, you can either automate or outsource that and just do stuff that's at your pay grade, enabling you to earn more. So lots of good reasons why individuals want it. And for organizations want it too. For companies, they want greater strategic flexibility. If your entire workforce is rigid, then effectively you can't pivot. The reality is companies should be spinning up good ideas way faster than they ever did, shutting down bad ideas way faster than they ever did, and pivoting and trying new stuff on a regular basis, or they'll die. It really is, for survival. Fractional work is much faster and more efficient for hiring, so you can get people in typically in weeks rather than months or quarters. It lowers your fixed cost base. We think the organization of the future is maybe half of the core headcount that it would have been, but with way more use of fractional talent, which effectively means that your fixed cost that you can't shrink very easily is quite low, but your variable cost will be a lot higher, but you can vary it based on what's the priority of the time. And then finally, access to better talent from around the world. When you're hiring portfolio professionals, you don't need to obsess over whether they live within an hour of the office or not. You can basically hire them from anywhere. And really the last barrier is simply time zone. On the assumption everyone speaks good English and has good Wi-Fi, the last remaining barrier is just time zone. Is typically it's easier to collaborate people in a similar time zone to you. So in essence, the organization of the future, and this is something that we actually teach organizations org design, but so do others out there. And there's many frameworks that can be used, but one of them is when you look at an org and say, how do we design it? If you think about all the work, and don't think more so much job titles, think work. There's low skilled work and high skilled work. There's work that you'll need for the foreseeable future versus work you need in the short term. And if we think that through on the lower skilled stuff, if you need it long term and it's low skilled, it's probably going to be automated. If you only need it short term and it's low skilled, you probably just use gig workers. I think Uber or whatever, or parcel delivery, there's so many things that are already there. On the higher skilled stuff, if it's higher skilled and you're going to need it for the foreseeable future and you need it, 52 weeks a year, 40 hours a week, whatever it might be, that's permanent hires. But if you need it on a more short-term basis, then it's portfolio professionals. So in essence, it works for organizations, it works for individuals. Now, one of the things that we like to teach, and this isn't our framework, we've kind of borrowed it from others, but basically there's a concept of Ikigai. And by the way, if there's any Ikigai purists here, they don't like the fact that businesses now like the phrase Ikigai. I'm fine with it. But basically there is a concept out there that you need to try and find the crossroads of doing what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. Clearly that's the nirvana. That's where you can really do great work, love doing it, get paid for it, and also know that the world needs you and you're unlikely to be made redundant anytime soon. Now it is a moving target. So what you love might change, what the world needs might change, what you can get paid for might change, because maybe some of what you do becomes automated. What you're good at might change. You might get better at some things, worse at others, or there might be more competition, so your relative strength it weakens, etc. So you're always trying to sort of massage it, and certainly in a portfolio career, at least every 6 months, you need to take a good hard look and say, what do I love doing? What do I not love doing? How do I massage that? What does the world need? What am I providing? How do I massage that? What can I be paid for? What in my world, or not too far from my world, what are the best paid elements, the worst paid elements? And finally, how do my skills stack up? Do I need to learn new skills, or have I developed new skills I can start monetizing? So it's a constantly moving target. And you need to be constantly looking at that. Just saying, this is my skill set, that's what I'll monetize for the next few years, is very dangerous because the world's just changing so fast. Now, I know there was a question on personal branding. I've got this one slide. So this is actually sort of a mishmash of profiles on the portfolio section. So all our members have profiles, and we tried to design it as a shop window for you as a portfolio professional. Now, what do we find matters? And I'll sort of slightly ad lib off the slides, but what we found I should start with a survey. So when we do surveys of our members and say, how do you find work? And it's not just our surveys, we also read other people's surveys. But simplistically, 70 to 80% of all the work doesn't go via a jobs board. It goes via word of mouth, networking, being helpful, referrals, etc. And if we think about, well, what are the two really big things you need to do? One is really have a clear story about who you are, how you add value, what your credentials are for what you're saying or promising, examples, etc., so that people, when they look at you, and when I look at you and think LinkedIn, think the portfolio sector, think any other platform out there, they say, I get what you do, I like what you do, and I can see why you might either be different or better than others. So it's really important to do that. And by this is one of those things that literally is a course, to say, who am I? What am I selling? How am I selling it? How do I find the work? How do I price the work? All of that stuff. But it's a really important thing. So definitely think online presence. Can people find you? And when they find you, will they understand what you do and say, that's kind of interesting, maybe we should have a coffee? And if I want you to say one thing from this, if you want to succeed as a portfolio professional, how can you have as many coffees as possible with people that have problems that you might be able to solve? Because if you get a lot of coffees, you'll get a lot of work down the road. And that's often how it happens. One of the reasons, for example, that companies and individuals don't normally write job descriptions when they need a portfolio professional is they often don't even understand the problem they're trying to solve. So what they want is to have a coffee with someone to say, I think this is my problem. Is it a problem? How do I define the problem? And then the people or person that has helped them define the problem is often the one they say, now can you help me solve it? So where the old world was like job description meets CV with recruiters in the middle, the new world is problem meets problem solver with coffee in the middle. And so definitely get yourself mentally prepared for that. Now, in terms of sort of your online presence, I typically recommend people have at least 5 profiles out there. I've personally got about 30. So obviously LinkedIn and the portfolio section are my big 2, but I do a bit of public speaking. And so I just said to myself, where do companies find speakers? So I did a Google search or a few, and I saw, oh my God, that's a really fragmented industry. There's like 6 or 8 or 10 speaker bureaus that help companies and conferences find speakers. I just put a profile on all of them. I don't know which ones will give me work. So rather than do nothing or worry, I've got writing a profile down to 30 minutes because I've worked it all out with LinkedIn and the portfolio sector. It's simplicity, it's copy paste. It's slightly different to that. So I've built profiles on all of them. Another part of my portfolio career, as I mentioned, is working with investors. Now they tend to find me through what's called an expert network. There's companies like GLG and GuidePoint and others. That's also a fragmented industry. So I've got profiles on 15 of those. And then there's a few other random places I've got profiles. But whatever work you do, think about who are my clients and how do they find people like me? And simply, if you don't know how, go to Google and just Google for the skills that you offer. Look which websites come top on both ads and non-ads, because they both matter. And think about putting a profile on all of them. Now, it might take you time. And don't put a bad profile. So if you're not sure what to put, join the Portfolio Collective. We'll help you work out how to tell your story, and then you can go and tell your story in all these other ways.
This is interesting.
But building your personal brand, telling your story, and just being findable is one. The other one, again, I don't have a slide for it, but the networking thing. I know some people shudder with networking, and I get it. It's like, is it really fun walking to a room full of strangers and drinking bad wine? Not cool. That's not what I think of networking. I think of networking as much more one-to-one or small group and kind of problem solving. So for example, you might meet a founder of a company that says, I need to learn more about X. So fine, let's have a chat. I'll educate you. Or a friend that says, I've got a client that's got a problem. And you say, sure, let's have a chat. And that, in my mind, is networking. It's actually the first step of doing a bit of value add. And if you're lucky, they'll say, Are you free? You know, send me a proposal. If you're, but obviously that typically doesn't happen. Occasionally it does. But typically what it means is you've left a warm, fuzzy feeling. They remember you. They remember your skill set. And when a bigger problem comes up, you know, you're on speed dial. That also means that they don't go and post a job for which 100 people apply. They just come straight to you. So it's much less competitive. I'm trying to get through some of these questions without slides, so I'm sure I'll still miss a few. Okay, so a little bit about the Portfolio Collective. So we've got now 13,000 members around the world. It's all been through word of mouth and SEO. So it's a really lovely community. It literally started off with 100 of my friends who had or wanted portfolio careers in early lockdown, but they told their friends, they told their friends, they told their friends, and we're now 13,000 members. Now, before you think that's a lot, that'll be a bit, you know, unfriendly. As with all communities, there's different levels of engagement. Like 4,500 of those are only newsletter subscribers. You know, 2,000 or 3,000 probably visit the website once or twice a year, but there are, you know, a few thousand, 3,000 or 4,000, depending on find out, who are really engaged and really nice. And they're all impressive people, and they all check their egos at the door and say, how can I help? It's just a really nice bunch. And what that means collectively is you know, if you think about portfolio careers, there's two big problems. There's a lot of other problems. One is it's lonely. The other is it's complicated. You know, being part of a community, and we tell all our members, you know, join at least 3 to 5 communities, because no one community gives you everything you need. Hopefully the Portfolio Collective is one of them, but you know, there's others out there. So that helps make it less lonely. You've got people to chat with. And the second thing is it's complicated to have a portfolio career, and that's where we help with things like you know, content, courses, events, etc. Yeah, so how do we help? I've already mentioned most of that content. We've got about 200 articles on every question we've been asked more than once about portfolio careers. We've written an article, done some research, written an article. We've got a couple of courses. We've run 18 cohorts of either our Catapult course, which is how to launch a portfolio career, and our mentor program, which is like how to be a board member, trusted advisor, that kind of a mentor, etc. We've had about 400 community events. We have like a monthly community networking on Zoom, various other things in person. One of the highlight was in November, we took over the Ministry of Sound for a daytime event, I hasten to add, but it was amazing. We had this, you know, 120 members all just having a lovely time. And then opportunities. You know, we've surveyed our members. 1 in 3 have found work through the Portfolio Collective. So we don't obsess over saying we'll find everyone work, because that makes us a marketplace. And what we've seen with marketplaces, they end up obsessing over client needs rather than member needs. So we've picked a side, we're on the side of the members, and the main way we add value is helping members help themselves. But what we have seen is between either companies coming to TPC and doing a search, and they do, there's a lot of HR people, chiefs of staff who are members of the Portfolio Collective, and they use it for finding talent, but also members helping members. So yeah, a member has a client and the client has a problem. The member comes back to the Portfolio Collective and says, can I pick someone's brains? And then that leads to coffee, etc. So all sorts of lovely ways to help people. People say lots of nice things about us. I won't dwell on it, but basically, if in doubt, check out Trustpilot. We've got some lovely reviews there. And this is the team. So it's a pretty small core team, you know, 10 people. Every single one of them have side hustles. So we like to be built for portfolio professionals by portfolio professionals. We've got lots of active members, some paid, some, you know, friendly. Most all the ones on here are paid, but paid by the job, you know, like paid to run events or paid to write articles or paid to support clients, etc. We've worked with loads of other members, and we'd like to think we practice what we preach as the future of work, which is a smaller core team with a lot of work done by smart, you know, portfolio professionals who fit neatly with the culture. And that was the last slide. I'm conscious I probably missed quite a few questions there. If you do want to get in touch with me, there's my email, there's my mobile phone number. You can find me online as well. And if you join the Portfolio Collective, you can find me there as well.